The brief history taught to Americans about the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis is that evil Soviets conspired with evil Castro to secretly place nuclear-armed ballistic missiles in Cuba to threaten the United States. The United States military uncovered this plot, so President John Kennedy ordered a naval blockade of Cuba. The commies backed down and removed the missiles. This is true, but leaves out key facts. First, the United States began installing 45 nuclear-armed Jupiter ballistic missiles in Italy and Turkey in 1961. This allowed the United States to launch a surprise nuclear attack on the Soviet Union. The Soviets protested this provocation, but were ignored. As a result, the Soviets shipped similar missiles to Cuba. They removed these missiles only after President Kennedy agreed to remove the American missiles from Italy and Turkey and not to invade Cuba. The second fact is that 162 Soviet nuclear warheads had been secretly shipped to Cuba, and several were already installed on missiles. The United States assumed nuclear warheads had yet to arrive in Cuba, so debated what to do about the missile sites under construction. All four members of the warmongering Joint Chiefs of Staff recommended the immediate bombing of these sites. In the great 2003 documentary, Fog of War, the Secretary of Defense at that time, Robert McNamara, visited Cuba in 1992 and met with Fidel Castro. He was shocked when Castro told him nuclear-armed missiles were ready to launch during this crisis, and that he had ordered these missiles launched should the United States attack. These missiles could have killed millions of Americans. Luckily, President Kennedy ignored the advice of his generals, who had also recommended a military invasion of Cuba. A great clip from Fog of War is linked below, where Secretary McNamara explains this meeting with Castro and his shock to learn how close the world was to nuclear war. A third fact is that the U.S. Navy was ordered to blockade Cuba to prevent Soviet cargo ships from delivering nuclear weaponry. The Navy interpreted this to include submarines. The U.S. Navy located one sub, the B-59, and began dropping small training depth charges to force it to the surface. This was foolish since submariners assumed they were under attack and couldn't communicate with Soviet ships while deep underwater. The captain of the B-59, Valentin Savitsky, concluded that war had begun and ordered the launch of a nuclear torpedo. This required approval from the political officer on board, who concurred. The Americans did not know this sub had nuclear weapons. It could send a nuclear-armed torpedo to the surface to explode and destroy several nearby American ships. If that occurred, American generals would demand a retaliatory nuclear strike that could lead to full nuclear war. Fortunately, the submarine brigade chief of staff, Captain Vasily Arkhipov, pictured, happened to be aboard the B-59 and overruled them. He ordered the sub to surface to make contact and find out what's going on. This man is the greatest hero of the Cold War, yet Americans have never heard about him, even though he may have saved their life. See the article linked below with more details. Few Americans know that the United States has set the stage for another Cuban Missile Crisis. When the Cold War ended, Soviet troops withdrew back home, while American troops advanced towards Russia, building new bases in Eastern Europe. See the short video linked below. This annoyed the Russians, especially in 2009, when President Obama authorized the building of 2 large missile bases in Poland and Romania. The United States claims these are anti-missile installations to defend Europe from an Iranian nuclear attack. However, Iran has no nuclear weapons and no serious plan to build any. It has no missiles that can reach Europe, nor is it building any. Moreover, there is no reason Iran would fire missiles at Europe. The United States claims it has SM-3 anti-missile missiles at these bases. But these small missiles lack the range to provide regional anti-missile defense. However, they use the same Mk-41 launcher used to launch American cruise missiles, and the United States is developing nuclear warheads for its cruise missiles. This will allow the United States to launch a surprise nuclear attack on Russia. American generals insist that everyone must trust them, even though it is impossible to verify what type of missiles are in these Mk-41 launchers. These two missile bases cost the United States over $2 billion to construct and serve no purpose other than to threaten Russia. This could lead to another Cuban missile crisis should Russia build missile bases in Cuba.